So I think the unifying theme in all of my work is about time and change, and also talking about things you're not supposed to talk about. So even though the work looks different in terms of if it's small and sequential or if it's a grid, it all has that theme running through it. Well, it opens with a self-portrait that I took, and I think it was probably my very first photo class. And I'm really amazed that I was thinking about this when I was a college student. That has a picture of me and an image that I ripped from Mid's magazine that was a photorealist painting of older women. And I was juxtaposing the two. And then the other self-portraits I did was 280 days when I was pregnant. And that was definitely a reaction against a lot of male photographers that were taking pictures of their partners when they were pregnant that made them look, that they were usually nude, and they made them look very voluptuous and fertile. And mine are very mundane. I took a picture of myself every day. I'm wearing clothes, and part of it was to indicate the long duration of pregnancy, and the clothes get a lot more repetitive, and you get a sense of the seasons changing. So they're not really about me per se, but anyone who experiences pregnancy has that kind of feeling. Well, my early work, the family sequences, were candids that I did with 35 millimeter, and it's about family interactions, and including a lot of the things that people would keep out of their family albums. So when something doesn't happen quite right, or also very mundane things, because most people would just take pictures, especially before digital, of like birthdays or celebrations rather than everyday life. Before I went to graduate school, I worked for 3 years doing freelance photojournalism. So that work obviously wasn't. But in graduate school, it quickly became autobiographical, starting with doing stuff about my mother-in-law and the Jewish immigrants who came to this country. I started doing, none of this work is in the show because it's not as good as what's in the show. But I started using a 4x5 view camera and photographing the interiors of their houses. Well, one of the reasons actually I started doing autobiographical work is doing photojournalism or street photography can be very exploitative, and you're not, you just do it and then you can show the work, whatever, without any accountability. And so by doing autobiographical work about my family, I would always show it to them before I exhibited it. And if they objected, they always would be able to find me. So part of it was for that reason, that it feels less exploitative to me because they can have a say if I show it or not. The more recent work called Living, which is about female aging, again, it's what happens if you live a long time. And so they're not particular to me, even though they obviously are me. I think that's every older woman looks at their body and goes, oh my gosh, what's happening here? And I think it also can be beautiful. I think it's a very accepting view of aging. Forgot to mention the work, What Questions Do We Ask?, which is based on the questions in the U.S. Census. And that work really came out of the cultural history work because I do a lot of, a tremendous amount of research in different types of archives and use the U.S. Census. And I was, which the first U.S. Census was in 1790. And I became fascinated and noticed how the questions changed over time. And I think our questions indicate the assumptions that we have, why we ask certain questions and not other questions, or how we phrase it and how the terminology changes. So there's 8 pieces in the show, and one is about race, one is disability, one is language, one is getting to work, technology. And so that the questions we ask really tell us a lot about our history. So I feel like this is almost a synopsis of American history, and I put it over an American flag to emphasize that. And the background are all these different census forms and how they look different over time. So the early ones are handwritten with this very elegant kind of handwriting, and then the modern ones are this sort of boring, generic government form kind of. Well, I became active with the Bethesda African Cemetery Coalition. I was commissioned by American University to do a photo collage because I've been doing these cultural histories of specific sites, and I live in Washington, D.C., and when you research, and they're not like the Washington Monument, but just ordinary sites, there's almost always a racial element to it and a displacement element. to it. So the neighborhood that I live in had been a black neighborhood in the right after the Civil War. And so he asked me to do a commission for this project, which was 3 historically black communities in Montgomery County. And that's when I met the people from the Bethesda African Cemetery Coalition. And what they're working on is to prevent the further desecration of a black cemetery. And it really speaks to me because my parents are both immigrants and my mother is from Poland. And the Jewish cemetery there, like many in Europe, was completely desecrated by the Nazis, where they took the tombstones and used them to line swimming pools. So it feels very personal. It feels like exactly the same thing, what they're dealing with.